Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
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 So I'm aiming to make this meeting fairly short and to the point. I think we did most of the discussing on Monday. And I mean, there's a little bit of discussion to do. I think ultimately we should be able to get through this pretty quickly tonight. So the very first thing I'd like to start with is there anyone who has anything they'd like to say, thoughts they'd like to share on the statements we've received between Monday and now?
No, I think most of them were sort of supportive of statements that we already received, except that there's definitely, a couple themes in them. Actually, before we get going too far into things, I had a question that I would like us to sort of discuss a little bit.
Okay, shoot.
It was brought up to me by several different people, both within and outside of Northreach, that there was a concern and a lack of comfort on having Rage involved in the discussions about this. And there was a feeling that it was inappropriate for her to be in the council room as we're talking about this. And I'd like us to discuss that as a council, how we feel about that.
I've recused myself from any voting at this time. I will not be voting for myself. I am only here in my own defense.
Personally, not to sound rude, but I'm willing to say anything to Rage's face, or in this case, lips, that I would if she were not here. So it doesn't matter to me personally, but I'll stand by whatever the council as a group comes up with.
I'm the same with Hazel on that one.
Yeah, I think that she has the right to be here and hear what the decision is. I'm glad she's recused herself.
As a topic that it was important that we addressed and had an understanding and consensus of. As long as there is a clear recusal, I think that pretty much satisfies the concerns that were voiced to me. I think if we, can all respect that, we should be just fine.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, is as long as she's recused herself from the voting, which she just said she has, then I don't see a problem with it.
I recuse.
Okay, did anybody else have any other questions, comments, thoughts, concerns before we get rolling? Sweet. So, the thing I think that we kind of got caught up in some semantics and overlooked the main topic that should have come from that 33-page letter. And essentially what that boils down to is that letter was statements from people who have essentially testified against Rage as being detrimental to the atmosphere and or growth of Northreach, and they would like us to ban her. Now, I think the first question we should ask, and on this topic, I'm actually glad that Rage is in the council room, because the first thing we should ask is if Rage disputes any of these accusations.
Yes, I do.
Would you like to go into detail, maybe clear up some misunderstanding?
With naming names, I never asked anyone to follow Gorin, ever. And the person that was named in that isn't even the person that was following him. Actually, it was Buttles that followed them. That followed Gorin. And I had no knowledge of that because I was taking a drunk Amp-Rider back to his tent. Also, the person whose property I damaged so that it was not legal anymore was one of the people helping bend the armor so it fit me. And we bent it back to the smaller size it was before I returned it to his campsite because I could not find him. As for the elections, I had nothing to do with that smear campaign. There was another person involved in that, and again, we're not naming names. So, if I am asked about it, I will name names, but that's up to Lucian to decide at this point. I have never accused anyone, well, other than having factual basis, I've never accused anyone of having sexual relations against someone else's will. That's a very stern thing to do. And as for the conversation I had with a certain person that happens to be a member of Ravenstone, I did send the screenshots of the apology. I stayed up until 3 o'clock in the morning with that person, talking to them, and also figuring out how to do some craft stuff that they wanted to do. And to my knowledge, that person says, "Hey, forgive and forget." I said, "Okay." And we've been, as far as I knew, hunky-dory ever since. And we've actually been working together, so there's a lot of stuff in those letters that is very speculatory that I'm not comfortable with, because I haven't had very many interactions with some of the people in these letters. And the only thing I can say is I hope the letters from the other people in my defense came through okay, because I want Northreach to be the best kingdom it can possibly be. I want all of our paperwork to be above scrutiny. I want us to have all of our hairs that could possibly be split tied up. I want all of our gray areas to be black and white. I never meant for my attitude to come off as anti-Northreach, because I absolutely love the idea of us becoming a kingdom. I do. I just always wanted the paperwork to be absolutely above scrutiny. And I'm sorry if I came off as abrasive and gruff sometimes in that, but I really did want to see Northreach become a darn good kingdom. And that's pretty much all I have to say at this time.
Okay, thank you. So, sorry, collecting thoughts here.
I have some questions regarding that, if that's appropriate now.
Yeah, absolutely. Shoot.
So I just want to clarify that there were some people who gave firsthand accounts of what they heard you say to them, and those are written in these reports. And so are you then saying that those people have falsely testified against you, basically? That they've written a report that is untrue?
There is one or two people that, yes, I would say that about, as I have witnesses to the incident with following Goran back to his tent. It wasn't even identified as the correct person, and I never spoke to them at that event.
How about the other ones where you were specifically called out as spreading information that is incorrect, accusing Goran of sexual harassment or sexual assault?
No, I never did. I had one person come to me that said that they had had that happen, and she turned around and spoke to somebody else about it, and I don't have any idea what's going on with that. I have never accused him of it because I have not seen it, ever. And he is always the first one to jump down someone's throat if he sees that behavior. I feel very strongly about that, but I have never, ever spread a rumor about him having sexual relations or sexually assaulting anyone. That is a very stiff complaint, and I would have taken it seriously and brought it to the prince, you, or had them send it in anonymously to someone, but I've never had any problems with it at all.
So the accounts we received from people saying otherwise are incorrect and false.
Yes.
Thank you guys very much for clarifying that. That's a really interesting issue. As someone who's not in the scuttlebutt group very much, there are so many people who wrote testimony that suggested that you specifically said something about Goran's sexual predation, about him not being trustworthy, etc. That comes through really clearly to me when I'm reading over the documents from an outside, impartial view, and that's pretty concerning.
No, I would never have done that. I have problems with people who do that, and anytime I've heard that, I may have laughed it off, but at the same time, I'd have looked at them and said no. Because again, Goran is the first one that comes up and says, hey, this makes me sick, this needs to be taken care of. And I believe that was even said in a Council of Crowns meeting in the last term, when banning other folks that had the same kind of predilection as I'm being accused of telling everybody Goran did. And that's a no. I would not have said that.
So basically, we have several people who just lied, is what you're saying.
Yes, actually I am.
So then it becomes our job as a council to decide what we believe. If we believe Rage or if we believe the letter.
That seems pretty clear to me as well, that it's I really appreciate Rach just being so clear on her points there. That helps.
Can you guys hear me?
Can now.
Yes. No, were you speaking?
Missed it.
No, I wasn't speaking. I think we lost Hazel.
Here now.
Okay, and so the other big issue that we need to address is the leaking of that letter to the public when it was a classified Council of Crowns document. It's very clear that a large percentage of our populace thinks that some action should be taken against that. And it is our job to determine what that action should be. I hate to say it. Some people may not believe me when I say that, but I really do hate to say this, but I think the best course of action forward is to remove Rage from Amtgard.
Permanently or for a period of time?
Permanently.
There is a strong enough case from enough people, and even if we threw out the claims you have disputed, there's enough violations of the code of conduct in that letter to make a strong case for banning you. And then add to that the breach of trust and the fact that due to your actions, our people feel they can't trust the Council of Crowns anymore, that I feel that that is the appropriate course forward.
So now we put it to a vote.
I would like to speak. I've been slow to speak so far this meeting. I want to speak directly to Lucian's comment that some people are feeling like they can't or they don't have faith in the Council of Crowns. I think that by and large that's not true. I think that some people are frustrated with us because we haven't taken swift action. And I would like to address that with everyone. That when all of this came out, we agreed and we started addressing this at our very next meeting, at our earliest chance. We didn't call an emergency meeting to do it, but we discussed it at length last meeting, and it was clear that we weren't at a consensus. And so we called a special meeting, 3 days later, to continue to try to address this. And though they might be frustrated that we're deliberating so much, I think that it's evidence that we're taking it very seriously. And committees need to take time to deliberate and need to weigh all the options. I think that it speaks well of the Council of Crowns that we haven't acted rashly. I mean, it would be easy to just say, this is how I feel, I'm going to go with it. But I think discussion is a good, healthy thing, and coming to some kind of an arrangement that works for everyone and for the best outcome of Northreach is worth taking the time. That's why I'm here. I have a pretty busy schedule, but I'm donating several extra hours in this volunteering position to do the right thing. And so where right now they're frustrated, I think ultimately, a week or 2 weeks down the road, hopefully they'll recognize that the time we took to make the decision that we come to was worth it to do the right way. Now, some people may think we made the wrong decision and still be frustrated with us. I spoke to several different people throughout today. Some people thanked me for being slow and cautious. Some people are frustrated that I haven't acted quickly or more quickly. So, I think there are a lot of strong feelings, and I think that's all the more reason we need to be careful and make sure that we make the right choices. Now, speaking directly to the issues that have come up with Rage, my thoughts were along the lines. First of all, I've talked to probably a dozen or more people today and in the last couple of days. I've read all the documents, and there are two issues that come up for me. The first is there was a breach of confidential information, and that is a serious issue for me with a fellow leader. I think it's important that the members of AmpGuard can trust their Council of Crowns. And Rage, I think you've damaged that trust by sharing some information that should have remained confidential. I've only been directly involved with that, but I've heard allegations of this happening a couple of times before. I also, without mentioning any specifics, have read some screen captures from conversations you've had with fellow top 5 officers that really alarm me, because it seems like bullying within the top 5. So my first thought is I think that it would be appropriate that we remove Rage from office and that we make her ineligible for to be an officer of AmpGuard for at least 1 year. I would encourage Rage to try to get some leadership training. I think that the AmpGuard has some things that she could get involved with, or there are other avenues that she might be able to pursue. I thought about looking up some of the things, but I just haven't had time to investigate that more. The second issue, I think, is addressed by the Code of Conduct. And as you read through the Code of Conduct, it lists about 5 different things specifically, and then clearly says, that this list isn't all-inclusive. The Council Crowns has the right to consider other things as a breach of Code of Conduct. The final item on that list, though, is creating a hostile environment. And that item is very subjective, and I feel that it's left subjective on purpose. So we as a council need to look at everything that's brought to us, and even though something might be opinion, I don't know that we can dismiss it easily, because that is clearly a subjective thing, and we've been directed to consider those objective things. I mean, ultimately, we're not a business place. We're not, a fraternal organization or anything. We're a hobby. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to belittle AmpGuard. I know some people are deeply involved with this, and it means a lot to their lives. But we are a hobby, and so I don't know that we have to rise to the same level as a courtroom would do, or an official human relations trial or something that would occur in a human relations investigation, in a corporation or something. We don't have that kind of burden of proof, where I think that it's reasonable to say that the opinion of dozens of our fellow AmpGuarders does really make an important difference. And so I think that creating the hostile environment that I've read about, and it's a really tough decision, because I've talked to several people and read several things that say that Rage creates a good environment, and that they really like her, and they're happy she's monarch and things. And then I've read several accounts over the years where she's really, rubbed people the wrong way. Hostile environment. Treated people poorly. People of things. So I feel like asking Rage or insisting that Rage step away from AmpGuard is appropriate, and I haven't settled in my heart the length of time that is. I feel like a permanent ban is probably too harsh a punishment. The numbers 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year have jumped out at me. I think that 1 year is probably too long, and I'd be happy to discuss with you guys whether it's 3 or 6 months or something else. And please, chime in, everyone, and let me know if you think I'm nuts or if you think I'm on the right track. But I think before we take a vote, we should talk a little bit more about what the punishment should be.
I agree that additional discussion is good. And I think it is also necessary, because there's still a lot of things that we haven't addressed. That, as I've been speaking with members of Lupin Moon and some of Ravenstone over the past, especially the last 3 days, but also previously, people are angry that we are not acting in their best interest. There are several people who have come forward to, take that risk, to use their voice, to express their concern at the situation that Rage's behavior as a contributor to AmpGuard causes. They feel it is overwhelmingly detrimental, and they are angry that we are not addressing it as a council. I absolutely think it is appropriate to discuss this, and I absolutely think it is our job to discuss it. And I have a pretty firm idea of what I believe to be the correct course forward. Part of what I've done over the last 3 days is I've spoken to people across Northreach, and I've reached outside of Northreach to people that I trust as being long-term AmpGuarders who are exceptional leaders, who understand AmpGuard, who understand people who play AmpGuard, who, have professional lives that give them an incredible skill set and perspective to be able to look at situations like this and find the rightest way forward. To be very clear, I have divulged absolutely no details. I have presented a generic situation, and I've asked for advice. What is the best thing? What are points that as a leader I should consider when I'm looking at this situation? And I've gotten some really incredible advice from people. And one of the things that was brought up to me, which I think is important for all of us to consider, is there are basically two reasons two reasons to ban a person. One is to be punitive in nature, and one is to be protective in nature. Punitive in nature, that's not really our job to punish people, right? We're not a court. It's not our job to make judgment on someone or their character. It is our job to protect the organization and the members that belong to it. So if we're looking at what's been reported to us, and even if you throw out the ones that directly Rage disputes, I believe there is still enough information, an overwhelming amount of information, even throwing out what she disputes, to tell us that we need to protect our members and our organization. Part of what makes this difficult is that there isn't, for the most part, one big red flag action that causes everyone to go, oh, wow, that person is dangerous, right? It's little things here and there that in and of themselves don't seem like they're really that big of a deal until you start to read 33 pages, which tells you the story of a person who is, and I'm going to use this term, a toxic player. Right? And we've all heard it. It's a term that's out there in AmpGuard. We understand it, and we all recognize it. So we have a lot of people who are willing to stand up and willing to tell us that they recognize a toxic player in our midst, and they're sick of it. They want their AmpGuard back, where they don't feel bullied, where they don't feel driven away, where they don't feel belittled, where they don't feel slandered. And it's our job to protect that AmpGuard environment for them. So I ask us to think about that, right? This isn't punitive. This is protective. It's our job to protect this. That's what we were elected for. That's what people are asking us to do.
So, and one point that I just want to push back a little bit on, Hadelin, is when people say that we're not taking action, we're taking action right now. We're definitely addressing this. We're taking it very seriously, and so I know that people want to see swift action, but I think that the wheels of justice turn slowly, and that is a good thing in the long run. And maybe I shouldn't have used the word punishment, but I think in Rage's eyes, whatever justice is dealt out, or whatever action we take tonight, if we take action against her, she'll see that as a punishment. So, I'm not getting caught up in the semantics, and sorry if I used the wrong word.
It's just one of those things that is really helpful for me to gain clarity. Like, what is our role in the entire AmpGuard machine, right? What are we supposed to do? What is our job? Because there's a lot of feelings involved in this. It's really easy to get mired down in someone's hurt. And there's a lot of that. We read a lot of that. But, you know, it's not our job to make judgment on someone's character. It's our job to protect the people that have elected us to lead them.
I totally agree with that. My personal feeling is I just don't want to deal with other people's drama. But I've been elected to be on the Council of Crowns, and I'll do the due diligence and work to make Northreach the best place it can be, and that involves protecting people and just, you know, taking the time to address these situations as they come up.
So there are a couple things that I've noticed and like have kind of spoken to me over the past couple days, and one of the main ones was that Rage was accused of stretching the truth to whether gain attention or be a detriment to AmpGuard or something like that. And the problem with it is twofold. One, I can see the point, and that's not a problem, but she does. And the other problem is that there are accounts that have been submitted in the package that have stretched the truth to paint her in a different light. And if we're going to hold her stretching the truth against her, we also have to turn that around and use that as information to kind of judge what was in that document and is it stretching the truth as well.
I would like to jump in there and say I actually really agree with that. There are some accounts in there that I feel are emotionally motivated and don't necessarily perhaps display the cleanest version, right? I agree with that. There's a lot of emotion in that document. And as I'm reading those reports, some of them have to be interpreted through that lens of removing some of that emotion that's added to the report. But it's also worth considering that those people feel so strongly and emotional about it that they're willing to go to that length. But even something else that we've talked about is trying to wade through this emotion and trying to find facts. And I think that's really important because, you know, we've all sort of talked about it. You can't, well, you can, but you shouldn't make any type of large decision based simply on an emotional response. I think we all agree with that. Like, we need to be able to look at the facts. We need to be able to weigh it logically and deliberately and come to a decision that we can support because it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. So one of the things that I did to help clarify that in my mind is I read back through all of those documents. I read back through all of the additional reports that we have. I read back through just notes that I have taken over this time. And I looked at all of them against the code of conduct. And I made a bullet point list that has each of the very clearly delineated code of conduct violations that are grounds for termination. And I pulled just facts out of that document that's full of feelings, just to look at it, to say, is this clouded by feelings, or is there substance to this? And when you just look at things that are backed up by fact, and I have a list, I'll pull it up right here. You know, there's one of the lines is sexual harassment or inappropriate sexual contact. I don't think anybody's saying there's inappropriate sexual contact that occurred, but there have been reports of basically sexual harassment, where several people have given firsthand accounts of being told by Rage that one of our members is a sexual predator and spreading unfounded rumors to support her claim. She disputes that she ever said those things. So that's a gray area. We have to determine who we believe there. But that's not feelings. That's what people have written down and told us is their truth. And we've had actually people who were quote unquote victims of sexual predator behavior saying, that never happened. That's not the case for me, so I don't know what's going on. The next one is theft or willful destruction of other people's property. So that's just an open and closed kind of deal. Rage admitted publicly she threw away somebody's property. It doesn't matter.
I threw away someone's alcohol.
It doesn't. Honey, they owned it.
Don't call me honey.
Okay.
I also
Whoever
put out
owned
a
that
message that
no
said that I
longer
would be
owned it
happy
because
if
it was thrown
someone
away.
would step forward, that I would be happy to give them the cash amount or replace it for them. No one has stepped forward and admitted to having it.
It's beyond the fact that you threw away someone else's property.
I threw away an illegal substance.
There's a whole lot of stuff that we can get into there, okay? And I don't think that the minutia details of it actually matter. There's a situation.
Okay,
we're all
then
aware of
we'll
what
just
happened.
leave the fact that there's kids in there and all kinds of stuff out, and that I threw it away because I was worried about a child getting into it. We'll just go ahead and leave that out then.
Okay, I would say that there are more appropriate ways to handle that situation. Instead of throwing it away, you could put it in a safe place, perhaps your own pocket. But
No, because I'm not going to be holding alcohol at a place that we're not allowed to have alcohol. It got thrown in a trash can, and then I was told, and then I immediately contacted the person that it was on their stuff of and said, hey, that's not cool, don't do it again, to find out that it wasn't his.
Not true.
Yes, it is. I have the screenshot for it. I contacted the prince first, and then I contacted him.
Hours later. That is not immediately.
No, I contacted Lucian immediately, and he didn't get back to me until after he was out of his own game.
Okay, so just so that's clear, you did not immediately contact the person whose belongings it was with.
I was advised by my other top 5 members to just let everybody play the games, and then handle it afterwards.
And that's fine. I just want to be sure that the statement that you just made is clear that that's not actually what happened.
I was waiting to hear back from Lucian.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that. So, continuing down, we have the more nebulous region, Niall has already spoken to, creating a hostile environment detrimental to the enjoyment of the group as a whole. I think Niall covered that really well. That part of what we're looking at is there are a lot of feelings that are negative surrounding this person who is sucking the joy out of Amtgard.
I'd like to interrupt for a moment if I could, Hadelin.
Yeah, thank you.
So one of the things that I came to realize is that the more negative things you say about a person, whether or say or hear, whether you hear or whether you know that person or not, the more you hear them, the more they become reality to you. And the more they become reality, when you finally do meet that person, the more likely you are to look for them. And so it's very hard to say that people that hardly know her or have only come encounter with her 1 or 2 times think she's a terrible person because of those 1 or 2 encounters. It can also be very largely based on the fact that rumors happen, drama happens, and negative things tend to spread a lot faster than the positive.
If I may speak up for a moment.
Certainly.
I have to say, I don't, again, have a whole lot of dealings with Rage personally. Rage, I have spent some time talking to you. There's been no adversarial interactions with us. And I also haven't drunk anyone's Kool-Aid in terms of who I support in Amtgard. We're sort of a fringe shire down here. I will point out that most of my feelings about your leadership and your conduct and whether or not what you're saying here is the true portrayal of what happened comes, my biggest concerns come from the direct screenshots with your own words there. Things like clearly you're super unhappy with the people that you're working with, and it's that you're making them feel bad. There's just no two ways around it. Texting Goran in, again, from a neutral outsider's point of view, it looks to me like a hostile text, an angry text, and something along the lines of nobody's going to ever dare to ban you, but what if I could type of thing. It just comes through really loud and clear. And that's not based on he said, she said. That's coming directly from the words that are written there. So that's perhaps a clarification of where my feelings come from.
Hazel, can I ask you if you have an opinion or a feeling of what the appropriate action we should take would be?
I am really unhappy with banning someone for life from Amtgard. It makes me feel miserable. As you've pointed out, it's a hobby. Thing that worries me is that I don't see what rage is going to come from after this that's positive, and I haven't seen any path forward that looks conciliatory. So while I'm more in favor of a suspension than a ban, I'm also nervous because I don't see where a path forward is once the suspension or restrictions are over. I don't see the positive path forward. I see really blatant contradictions in the facts. Someone's got to be lying somewhere. That worries me too. So I guess I'm not quite hardcore on one way or the other. I'm not as happy about banning as perhaps some of the other members are.
Thank you.
And to be clear, I don't know that N is per se happy about banning anyone. Like Hadelin said, it's a matter of protecting the organization, and like you said, Hazel, I'm not certain that it's been demonstrated there can be a positive way forward. I would very much like to believe that there could be one, but I've seen no evidence of it.
That's my reason for supporting a ban if it does come to that, which doesn't make me happy, Rage, because it's clear that you have talent, you have drive, you have people who are loyal to you, and you've brought a lot to your park. Also, obviously clear that you've somehow surrounded yourself with a maelstrom of contradictions, unhappy people, serious conflict of the highest order outside of stealing or whatever you want to call it. Outside of that, there's this whirlwind around you that, despite your positive energy that you're obviously bringing, there's also a lot of heartache, and I wonder where you want to go forward with that.
Where I want to go forward with that, Hazel, is that if I do get suspended or banned, I would like to see an actual kind of format for banning someone for bullying, rumors, posing a negative environment. I want to see it standardized so that for all the people that have had problems in AmpGuard. I would like to see a positive note come out of this, and that would be a more positive environment for AmpGuard. So if you guys would be kind enough to figure out what's going on, I would like to move forward with this, and I know you guys and the spectators would like to find out what's going to happen to me next. So if you guys would figure out whether I'm being suspended or banned, I would be very appreciative, because there's a lot of hard feelings, there's a lot of speculation, but I really would like us to standardize how we go about doing this for moving forward for other people in this situation.
Hey, Puddle Bubbles, can I ask you what you're feeling like the appropriate next step forward is?
I've actually been viewing this as almost two separate issues. On one hand, we've got the packet of statements that, with so much contradiction and just instability within that package, I'm hesitant to make any decision on it. And then the second part of that is that I do recognize it as private information that should not have been shared, and I don't see any way around like that being not okay. And so while I don't think banning her is the right action, um, I would not be opposed to seeing her barred from running for office. Let her be a part of AmpGuard. Let her volunteer and help the organization in other ways, but maybe leadership just isn't that way.
I'd like to expound on that a moment. So we have here a very clear, non-hazy violation of trust. I believe that this is sort of the first case where she was caught hand in the cookie jar. There are 3 previous occasions that I was privy to that I believe she also leaked and spread confidential information outside of the Council of Crowns that she was privy to only because of her office. Those are situations that's my belief. I have no confirmation from her that she did that. And so that is absolutely a he said, she said, or she said, situation. And so I haven't reported those in a formal way. I feel very strongly that she has given information previously to other people outside of the Council of Crowns, and that is part of what motivated her to feel that it would be okay to do that this time. But I have no proof of those, so I have not brought those forward as official statements.
Sorry, I got cut off for a second there. Back now. And I agree with that, and that's why I think it would be appropriate to remove Rage from office. I think that she's breached a trust that is important that we maintain, and I think it's important for us to remove her from office out of respect for the individuals that shared confidentially with us, as well as all Northreach, so that they can in the future trust the Council of Crowns, and that we take the confidential information they share with us very seriously.
I'd also like us to consider why there is a code of conduct in AmpGuard at all. When AmpGuard started, there was no code of conduct. It didn't exist. That was drafted to help in situations like this. It was drafted to make a clear expectation of behavior that we find on a national and international scale to be acceptable. When you cannot follow these pretty simplistic behavior standards, that's like you're out. This is not, it is not your right to be an amped guard. And if you can't meet the bare minimum behavioral standards that have been agreed upon internationally, you don't belong here.
Hadelin, where I can respect you saying that you have suspicions that she could have leaked previous documents, I have no knowledge of that. I have no experience with that. I did not see it. Therefore, I cannot judge her on it.
Oh, I completely understand, which is why I, didn't write a report or make an official statement on that, because it's my personal experience of working with Rage for a year in office now, and they're pretty strong suspicions, but I don't have that black and white paper proof. I just know that I've dealt with her for a long time, and that's my feeling. And I understand that that's not a data point that can sway someone in one direction or the other. I'm just sharing my feelings.
All right, so at this point, unless there's some discussion that someone's dying to share that we haven't yet, I think it's time to do the voting thing, and I have heard 3 potential resolutions. One of them being to simply remove Rage from office, the next being to remove her from office and suspend her, and finally to ban her altogether. So I'll give a couple seconds.
Sorry. I had a member of Lupa Moon message me with an alternate suggestion.
Okay.
Which is sort of along the same vein. So the suggestion was a 2-year membership termination, followed by a permanent restriction from ever holding office. To be clear, I support a permanent ban. However, this was brought to me and I am bringing it to the council.
Okay.
And further clarification on the proposal that I brought up, it was not simply just to remove her from office, it was to bar her from running for office again.
Okay, so let me make sure I got you clearly. You want to bar her from running for office again. Are you also advocating in that same breath of removing her from office now and or any kind of suspension?
I would say that this vote would remove her from office, and from this point forth, she could not hold an office within the AmpGuard organization.
But no ban or suspension.
At this point, no.
Can I ask that we deal with those 2 issues separately?
I agree.
Just for clarification, which 2 issues specifically?
The idea of whether or not we ban her from office and whether or not we ban her from AmpGuard.
Gotcha.
Because, and I think I said it already, but I'll just repeat. For me, there's really two separate issues. There's Rage as a leader, and I think that I've seen ample evidence from screenshots of the way she's had conversations with other people that it's bullying, and the leaking information that was supposed to remain confidential. I think those are issues that are directly related to leadership, and so I think we need to address that. The code of conduct is more a general on whether or not we want her in AmpGuard of Alaska, and I'd like to deal with those two issues separately.
Hadelin, I'm sorry, I'm trying to jot notes here. The member messaged you a suggestion of 2-year suspension, and what was the second part?
A permanent ban from, I'm sorry, a permanent restriction from holding any office within Northreach.
Gotcha, thank you.
So something Hazel said earlier is coming back to my mind now. If we can find some positive way of going forward, I think it's worth trying that. And when we talk about, my suggestion was removing her from office immediately and preventing her from running for a certain time instead of making it permanent. I also wonder if maybe rather than we make that a time-bound situation, because making her wait doesn't necessarily mean that she'll be a better leader when she takes office again. Maybe we should say that she can't run for office until she can demonstrate that she's had some training on how to be a better officer. Does that make sense?
I understand the place where you're coming from. I often look at AmpGuard as an incredible training ground for skill sets that can be applied in the real world. And I appreciate the desire to leave room for education and sort of redemption. However, I believe that the demonstrated pattern of completely inappropriate abuse of power is enough that we would be nearly negligent to allow a person who's demonstrated these patterns of behavior to hold office in the future. That's not a once fooled, shame on me or whatever. Like we're past that. Okay?
So I did just get a message from a member here also suggesting a 6-month suspension with a 1-year bar from running for running for office starting upon her return. Which I think really is just kind of the second option we had in the first place, just with time limits added to it.
I'm like, the more I look over the way that our bylaws and leadership and everything is set up, there are definite ways where you can be a positive part of the organization without being in an office. If you're going to talk about putting a time limit on the office, I strongly suggest it's never hold office. If power is the problem, why would you put a time limit on it so that it can return as a problem?
That's a good point. That's, I think that maybe, I guess what I'm thinking is if she wants to run again and can learn leadership skills that would benefit her and then benefit us, I am still willing to consider that. I agree that time doesn't necessarily heal anything in this particular situation. But if she receives training, I think people can grow and become better than what they are today. And so that's the place that I'm coming from when I suggest, if she can demonstrate improved leadership via education or something else.
I would actually like to chime in on my own behalf for a moment. I would be
We've
happy
never
never
let
holding
other
office.
people we've been considering do this.
That's actually true.
I'm sorry, you guys were kind of talking over each other. I'm not even sure what either one of you said.
In all of the situations where we've had people, members that we are considering reports that have been given to us, they're not part of the council's deliberations. We take statements from them, we allow them to say their piece, and then during the deliberations, the council is making the decision. This is the council's decision.
I agree with that, and I appreciate Nyal's request those two items separate too. I think that the leadership should be addressed first, and then we should go from there. It doesn't make a difference one way.
Hazel, I actually think that we might be better served going the other way. If sort of listing out the options from most to least severe, right? Because just in a general sense, if there's a consensus for a permanent ban, we don't need to talk about whether or not she can hold office, because that's not an option. So I think if we start that way to find the place where we have consensus, then we figure out what that next step is. If that involves some type of permanent termination or some type of temporary suspension, then we take the next step of what do we do about the leadership things.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we need to do a vote on if, and if so, how long we want to suspend or ban rage. If that comes to anything less than a flat out ban, then we will need to vote on what to do about her being in office. Yes?
That is my
Yes.
suggestion, yes.
Okay, so what we have here, sorry, I just got a message. Give me 2 seconds.
I must have missed something. What are we doing right now?
I was in the
Lucian's
middle of
checking the
saying,
message.
yeah, I was in the middle of saying something, and I got messages from like 7 different members all at once. I'm almost through. Give me just one more second.
I will say, someone pointed out to me that if we do permanently remove Rage from office, she does have the right to petition that decision at any point in the future. And at that point, I think that she could, use as evidence that thing that I'm talking about, where she has some training or something. And if that evidence is substantial enough or enough to sway a vote of the people, then she can hold office again. And so I would be comfortable with a permanent vote. to bar her from office, because there's always that opportunity that you can improve yourself and then go to the people and ask and petition for recognition of the achievements that you've made and the progress you've made in your life and your newfound skills and abilities. So, in that light, I would be willing to consider a permanent ban on leadership.
And to that same vein, every person who has membership terminated absolutely has the right through our BAM, the Bylaws and Admin Manual, to appeal that decision at any point in time. So if they feel that that was a decision was unjust, or if they come back and say, I've thought about this a lot and I am penitent for these things that I was contributing to, that goes a long way with people. But I believe that it is our job as a council to protect the organization and let those people come forward and advocate for why they should be allowed back, what they've done to redeem themselves.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm about to totally repeat what you just said, Hadeland. But one of the messages I just got is I think in agreement with what you were saying, and that's that even should we permanently ban rage, that ban can always be overturned by the all thing. We had that happen with 2 players not very long ago.
I'll also say that, for those 2 players, they came back and they apologized. They recognized that their actions placed the organization and members of the organization in harm's way and at risk, and they were genuinely sorry for that. And it's a permanent ban is not a permanent judgment. It is an action that is taken to protect the organization. And if someone can then demonstrate that at some point in time down the line, they're no longer a risk to the organization, the membership considers that.
Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and start the vote here. I did get, sorry, last time I promise. I did get one more last message pointing out a member who is concerned that if we do not levy a ban against rage, how will she then react and treat the members who have spoken against her? That said, I am going to call for a vote here, and I'm going to start with a permanent ban, as Hadeland just said. Not a permanent judgment, could always be overturned later. But as far as permanent ban, I'm just going to go down the list here. Puddle Bubbles.
No.
Hadeland.
Yes.
Hazel.
No.
Neal.
No.
Okay. 6 month 6 month suspension. Puddle Bubbles.
I have a question. Sorry.
Okay.
I know it's clear on I think it's on the Board of Directors, and I wasn't sure if it was clear on the Council of Crowns. Is the Northreach Monarch voting only in the case of ties, or are voting in all these options?
As far as I understand it, it was voting in all options, and maybe it didn't come through, but I did actually vote for the ban.
Thank you.
Yep, I apologize.
For clarifying that.
Yeah, I apologize that it did not come through a minute ago. Okay, so on that note, 6 month suspension, Puddle Bubbles.
Are we just talking straight 6 month suspension with nothing after that?
Well, not necessarily. So we've decided a minute ago to treat these separately. We were starting with length time removed from game because we're at a permanent ban, then the office wouldn't really matter. So what we're voting on right now is how long we're going to remove her from Amtgard, and then we will vote on oh, yeah. Sorry, message just got and then we will vote on time out of office. But I jumped the gun. Between permanent and 6 months, there was supposed to be a 2-year option. So, that said, 2 years suspension. Puddle bubbles.
Can I interrupt and suggest something?
Sure.
Before we vote on time-bound things, we've discussed a permanent ban from office. And if we're going from descending time length, should we take that vote first? And I'm going to say, please, let's do.
Why would we jump from suspension from Amtgard to leadership and then back?
Well, if we're looking at it as the course of time, a permanent ban from Amtgard is worse than a permanent ban from office, but a permanent ban from office is much longer and maybe more significant than a time-bound ban from being able to attend.
Okay, I'll tell you what. In my head, it made a whole lot more sense to discuss time out of Amtgard and then time from office. But why don't we take a
I
vote?
support that.
Yeah, I was on the same page as Lucian with that.
Hazel, did you have thoughts?
I'll hang in there with whatever you guys come up with.
Okay, so that sounds like that puts the majority of us at thinking that we should discuss time out of Amtgard and then time out of office. Which would bring us back to 2 years suspension from Amtgard. Puddle bubbles.
No.
Hadeland?
No.
Hazel?
No.
Neal?
No.
Okay, brings us down to 6 months. Puddle bubbles.
Yes.
Whoa, what happened to 1 year?
Right. Yep. Sorry.
Oh, was there a 1 year? I'm sorry, guys. Okay, 1 year. Puddle bubbles. Did that last bit come through, or was I holding the wrong space on the screen again?
No, you came through. I am just. I don't know.
Yeah, no pressure. Take your time to think about your. I'll come back to you. I just wanted to make sure that I was heard.
Yeah, you were heard.
Okay, I'll come back to you last and give you time to think. Hadeland.
Yes.
Hazel?
Yes.
Neal?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna vote yes, and Puddle Bubbles?
Yeses have it.
Okay. So that's got us at a 1 year suspension from Amtgard. And now, because I missed a whole bunch of them, I'm just gonna go over this real quick and make sure I have all these time lengths down. We've discussed permanent ban from office, 1 year ban from office, and return to office only once demonstrating leadership training. Am I forgetting anything else?
I think that we might have come to a consensus that the leadership training one isn't really necessary.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that was what I took away from it. We might want to make sure that I'm not off base there.
No one's arguing with you, so I'm going to say that you're not. So that leaves the two remaining that I scribbled notes about being either a permanent bar from office or a 1-year bar from office once the suspension ends. Am I forgetting any?
I did have one was a 2-year, but
Okay, and I just read messages that I may have misunderstood. Puddle Bubbles, were you voting yes, or were you asking if the yeses have it?
No, I was voting yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Okay, so we will go on with those three. Permanent removal from office. Puddle Bubbles,
Yes.
Hadeland,
yes.
Hazel,
Yes.
Neal.
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes as well. So that brings us to the conclusion that we are formally suspending Rage from Amtgard for the course of 1 year and permanently barring her from holding office in Northreach.
Thank you, everybody, for really civil, really deliberate, really well thought out and considered discussion. I really appreciate that from every single one of you in this council. Thank you very, very much.
Indeed, you guys are all awesome. This was handled literally as civilly as it could be. I'm proud of this council. And with that, I have to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning for work, so I'm going to bid everyone good night.
Good night.
Night all.
Good night.
Good night.
Madeline, is there a place I can send this recording to, or how are we doing that?